Many of us here in Austin walk only when we want exercise, our car is broken, it's a pretty day, but people around the world walk because they must. So today we'll talk about a walk to raise money to make a difference in the lives of those people all around the world and right here at home. Stay with us for Austin Faith Dialogue.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
We're glad you've joined us today for Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Sandy Wilder, your host, and today we're talking about the Crop Walk and about Church World Service and the difference we make in the lives of people all around the world just because we walk. And the guests are Sheila Wojcik from First United Methodist Church.
Great to be here, Sandy.
I'm glad you're here. And Kevin Murphy, you're on the staff of Church World Service.
That's right. It's good to be here.
Glad to have you. And let us not assume that people even know what Church World Service is. Kevin, can you define the organization?
Sure, good idea. Church World Service is the international relief and development arm of the National Council of Churches. And we engage in ministry in over 80 countries around the world.
And we have, I understand, the state office for Texas Church World Service right here in Austin.
That's right. The regional office is here in Austin, and that's where I'm officed and staffed.
And coming up is the once-a-year big citywide fundraiser, the Crop Walk. Tell us what that is before we see the video that describes it.
Sure. Well, in particular, the Austin Crop Walk, which is the 6th largest in the nation, is a walk intended to raise funds to help organizations and food pantries around the city and around the Austin area to help feed hungry people and make a difference in their lives.
People get pledges and then they walk.
That's right.
And it's only, what, 5 kilometers?
It's 5 kilometers, which is 3.1 miles. And in fact, there's a 1 kilometer walk for folks who don't feel they can do the 5 kilometers, which only takes about 20 minutes then.
Sounds like such an easy thing to do to make a difference. And you have the video.
That's right.
From Church World Service that describes what a crop walk is. So let's see if we can get it to roll now.
All right.
Cambodia and many countries, people have to walk every day to survive. Cambodia is a place where miracles are happening after the horrors of genocide and years of violent conflict. Each day, Church World Service is at work in this country that is one of the world's poorest, empowering its people to change their lives. Change in Cambodia depends on its people. And fighting hunger takes more than offering families a bowl of rice. Villagers need to be able to grow their own food. This builds confidence and self-sufficiency and ensures the health of families into the future. Ending hunger takes time, respect, and real partnership. As each seed is planted, watch hope grow. These refugees return to Cambodia, and with the help of Church World Service, are beginning to farm land that was not used during more than 15 years of civil war. A community bank is established with the support of Church World Service, lending seed and fertilizer that are then repaid in rice seed from the farmer's first harvest. The cycle of help and hope will continue for seasons to come in this village.
I am very happy. Everyone is very happy with the assistance from the authorities, the organization, and especially Church World Service, who helped us with our land cultivation. So next year we will have enough to eat.
Cows are an essential tool for plowing paddy fields. And so, pairs of animals provided to groups of villagers through a cow bank help to ensure productive fields. And the offspring of the cows help secure family livelihoods for years to come. Keeping animals healthy, however, is a critical need. Village-based animal health workers are trained to vaccinate animals and attend to other basic needs. With healthy animals, farm families can cultivate more land and improve nutrition, important steps in the fight against hunger.
The 10 million landmines in the fields of Cambodia are also a devastating barrier to local food production. Mines have killed or injured tens of thousands of Cambodians over the years and idled hundreds of thousands of acres of fertile farmland. Church World Service supports mine awareness programs to ensure that women, children, and farmers know how to avoid the danger. And we support landmine clearance so that farmers can return to the fields and begin planting. All this is helping to build a more stable food supply for the people of Cambodia. Water in this Cambodian village is scarce. People must walk to get water from a nearby river that is not clean. These village volunteers are working with Church World Service to dig a well so that every family will have clean drinking water. This initiative is part of a Church World Service program that trains well drilling teams and teaches the importance of clean water and improved sanitation to prevent illness. Just like other places in the world, Cambodia's future is in the hearts and minds of its children. That is why Church World Service focuses on education for children and adults. In addition to constructing schools to serve tens of thousands of students, Church World Service offers literacy classes and vocational training.
This is your crop walk making a difference in Cambodia. You can sense their dignity restored. You can see the hope in their smiles and hear it in their laughter. Their world is a better place because you care. But Cambodia is just one of many places where your commitment is making a dramatic difference.
Given the resources, people become empowered to change their own lives. None of this can happen without people like you who join our crop walk to help stop hunger or give generously to Church World Service. Each year, more than 2 million volunteers and sponsors participate in nearly 2,000 crop walks all across the U.S. Your Crop Hunger Walk is counting on friends like you to help people in your own community and around the world. More than $3 million from crop walks is designated for food pantries and meal sites in U.S. communities each year. Walk with us. Bring along your family, your friends, your congregation, your neighbors, for a local event that responds to a global need. Walking together and gathering donations, we can make a difference. When we are united, hope lives. Lives change. This is your chance to make a difference by raising awareness and funds. So join the Crop Walk and walk with the world.
Amazing stuff, that just walking can make such a difference in people's lives. And Sheila, let's get to your story, because you're a supporter of the Crop Walk.
Right.
And you had an opportunity just recently then to go see what a difference that money makes through Church World Service internationally. Tell us a little bit about that trip.
Well, it was an incredible experience. I went with a group of about 11 people, mainly Texans, and we went with Oscar Bolioli, who is a leader of Church World Service. And it was a fact-finding trip. We wanted to see what was going on and how Church World Service helps. And we visited hospitals, clinics.
But where were you?
In Cuba.
Okay.
In Cuba, mainly in Havana, although we did get to see some of the outlying provinces. And we visited clinics and saw firsthand what the need is for medical equipment and medical supplies and pharmaceuticals. In the special period since the fall of the Soviet Union, the Cubans don't have the hard currency and really don't have any supporters to really get them that medicine or equipment. And at the polyclinic we visited, the emergency clinic, they had an old x-ray machine. They called it the United Nations. It was from the 20s, and they said all the parts came from every country in the world to make it work. And Church World Service had donated them x-ray machines in the past, and they were so excited at the thought of getting some more x-ray equipment.
And how bad was the situation before? Because there was a machine.
Well,
couldn't they keep up with the patient load?
Well, evidently it only could be used 3 times a day because it didn't store electricity. And we were told situations where, you know, young children came in with broken bones and they had to be set by feel because they couldn't get an x-ray film of the injury.
What made you want to go take this trip? Cuba is sort of off the beaten path for many of us. Why Cuba? Why
Well,
choose?
that's a long story, but I'll try to make it short. It's been a lifelong dream. I studied Latin American languages and literatures for many years, and I was always fascinated by the Cuban literature and the poets. They have a pretty extensive tradition of poetry and songs and music, and I had just always been enchanted with Cuba. And the thought of going after so many years, I couldn't pass it up.
Obviously, it's made a big difference in your life. And what was the role of the Texas Church World Service office in making this trip happen?
Our office coordinated the trip. I mean, we invited people like Sheila to consider going on this trip to Cuba, and helped coordinate all of the arrangements. It's difficult getting into Cuba. It's not like flying anywhere else in the world practically, and so there are special visas that are required and those kinds of things, and Church World Service, with its contacts in Cuba, was able to make that happen, particularly in the Cuban church community.
Well, I think that's really important. We were met literally at the airport by a member of the Cuban Council of Churches, and they were our guide throughout.
So what you're saying is that the church is not dead in Cuba.
Oh no, it's very much alive, and that was a real surprise to many of us on the trip. We got to attend worship services on the Sunday we were there, and we were a multi-denominational group, so some people went to the Baptist church, the Methodist church, Presbyterian, whatever, and it was really incredible to see the dynamism of the church.
And what have you brought back from that church experience to your local church experience here in Austin?
Well, I've given lots of talks and shown my slides and trying to just get a different view about Cuba and about the church there. I think a lot of people are surprised to know that there is an active church. Religion was repressed for many years, but they do have freedom of religion now. And they say that in Havana, a city of about 11 million, there's about 500,000 people any Sunday attending worship services.
It sounds like that might be a good example for us, actually, to get more excited about the faith and to get us to participate more.
Well, I think you can certainly say the social gospel is alive and well in Cuba, especially with the emphasis on people and health and human services. That really pervades the culture.
The social gospel is, you might just define that.
Well, helping other people. We visited a seminary in Matanzas, a small town, and the woman in charge said that wherever life is affirmed, there is God, and life is affirmed.
The social gospel then is not just spiritual life, but it's getting involved hands-on in people's lives, right?
Right, and you really see it with the Medical Commission, which is an arm of the Cuban Council of Churches.
Good. I can't wait to get back to some more questions about that, about your trip and about Church World Service and CROP. So we'll come back in just a minute. Thank you for being with us on Austin Faith Dialogue. Stay tuned for the second half. We're glad you're still with us on Austin Faith Dialogue when we're talking about Church World Service and the Crop Walk and the difference we make all around the world. And our guests are Kevin Murphy with Church World Service and Sheila Wojcik from First United Methodist Church. Good to have both of you. I'm intrigued, Sheila. You were talking a little bit about your trip to Cuba recently to take a look at what's going on in the medical field. And I wonder what other images you have of the needs there in Cuba that Church World Service is trying to meet.
Well, I really felt like I went back in time. If you look at the medical technology, the medical labs, it looks like someplace out of my high school. You know, really old microscopes and centrifuges from the 60s. But probably the most graphic images of surgical gloves being washed and dried out on the windowsill. They have to use everything again. So even plastic gloves that we would just toss away, they have to reuse in examining rooms. And the other thing was about dental drills. They have 24-hour dental clinics, but sometimes only one drill works, so they just kind of have to pass it around to different stations.
And actually, Cuba's probably doing pretty good to provide that much care for its people with those few resources. So what did you see that Church World Service is able to do at this point in Cuba?
Well, supplying medicine and equipment that's requested by specific hospitals. I think that's what struck me the most, that the work of Church World Service is very, very targeted and it's very efficient. They just don't go in with caseloads or armloads of medicine. They ask very specifically what is needed, and then they work to make sure that that's what is given.
Now, from the office perspective, from the administrative perspective, Kevin, what did you all hope would happen as a result of this trip, and did that happen?
Well, one of the things that we hope that would happen is exactly what's happening here, and that is people like Sheila, our participants, would come back and tell the story of the work that Church World Service is engaged in Cuba, and also tell the story of the Cuban churches and what they're doing to be in ministry to proclaim the social gospel and act that out. And that was our main hope, and that's what folks are doing around the state now, those 11 or 12 participants. So we're real pleased with that and the kind of story Sheila can tell.
They're telling the story, and then what long-term do you suppose will happen?
Well, long-term, we're hoping that through telling the story that in the case with Sheila and the folks who were on that trip, that there might be those who are moved to help the Cuban churches supply some of those medical needs, because it is such a desperate situation for medicine and supplies, and we just hope that people will respond to this kind of story and help.
Not everybody will necessarily have access to medicines, to
Right.
equipment, to whatever. But part of what we're trying to do here today is to talk about the crop walk, which is
Yes.
something we can do. Give us some specifics about that.
And that's another way that people can help, even with whether it's Cuba or any one of the nations around the world that Church World Service works in and with, and also locally, people through the crop walk, through raising funds, through walking, can help feed hungry people and can help make a difference in people's lives. And that's what the Austin Walk is all about. Last year there were over 1,600 walkers on one of the worst days of the year. It was cold and rainy and miserable, and yet 1,600 people showed up to walk. We had hoped originally for 2,000. We were so afraid of what was going to happen that day, but people came out and helped raise money and helped feed people, just helped to make a difference. And that's what we're hoping for again this year, and better weather.
True.
Yes.
Now, is all the money sent outside the United States?
No. 25% of the funds will be returned to the Austin community. Organizations like the Capital Area Food Bank, Austin Community Gardens, Hill Country Community Ministries up north for the folks in Leander and Cedar Park, and a lot of small pantries, local church pantries like St. Julia's Catholic Church that runs a pantry will receive funds that are raised because people are walking.
And I wonder if you might happen to have, from your years of working with crop walks, some really good story about a specific difference that money raised in the crop walk has made here in this area.
Sure. One great example is that the Capital Area Food Bank has a new program called Texas Fresh Approach. And that program is one designed to get fresh vegetables for the food bank. That's one of the things that a food bank never has. It's very hard to get fresh produce. The program engages the Texas, some of the Texas prisons to raise crops that are then donated to the food bank. And it was money from the crop walk that was the seed money to make that program a reality. Because people walked, Texas Fresh Approach became a reality. So that's a great example of how crop walk money makes a real difference right here in Austin.
Nice creative approach.
Yes,
now,
it is.
lest we forget, when is the crop walk this year?
Good.
And how do people, if their local church isn't really pushing this,
Sure.
how do people get in touch with someone to give them some information?
Well, the crop walk is Sunday, March 7th. It's down on Town Lake. It begins at Fiesta Gardens on Town Lake. If folks are interested in walking, they can call the crop office. The number's 451-2062. Get the sponsor forms, pledge forms, other information. If they're interested in bringing it back to their church or organization, we can supply them with packets with posters and bulletin inserts and all kinds of material, because it's still not too late for churches to become involved, even if they haven't started on it yet.
And you also said organizations, so I
Sure.
assume that means that some of the groups that participate in the crop walk are not necessarily local church based.
That's right. There have been fraternities and sororities, local service clubs like Kiwanis and Rotary can participate, and that's one of our goals, is that it is open to the whole community. It is primarily religious based. The religious institutions are our main support, but there have been many other groups that have been a part of that through the years.
The more the merrier.
That's right.
And Sheila, you've been a participant in crop locally.
Right, for many years.
And now had a chance to see the gifts in action somewhere else. Talk a little bit about what difference that's made in your support for the crop walk, or in your participation in your local church, or maybe even in your own personal faith life.
Well, I think it makes me really feel connected to other people, and it makes me feel like I can actually go out of my own little life and help other people. I'm a busy professional. I'm a wife and mother. I have a busy life, and I can't be out there directly, working in a service capacity all the time, but through participation in crop and working with Church World Service, I can. So I think it made me feel really, really proud that I could actually have this effect all over the world just through my involvement with crop and Church World Service.
And I wonder what stirrings you feel about, say, continuing involvement or continuing relationship with the folks in Cuba?
Well, we have our little group. We get together, we communicate, we send email. We have our little reunion meetings. And I've actually been contacted by Dr. Gorin, who was our leader, and she's really asked, if we can do more. Especially, they were hit by the hurricane recently, and she's asked us to directly send aid, clothing, anything we can. So our little group, we're going to get together shortly and see how we can more directly help the people of Cuba.
I hope it's a long-term partnership. And speaking of long-term, Kevin, you said earlier that our crop walk here in the Austin area is the 6th largest in the entire country.
6th largest in the country.
How many crop walks across the country are we talking about?
About 2,000. And they're large and small. They're like the Austin Crop Walk. They're also in small towns in the country. Little towns like Big Lake, Texas, out in West Texas, has a crop walk and raised over $7,000, and it's a very small town. So it can be in a large city or it can be in a small town.
What do you suppose the difference is in Austin to make our walk so successful?
It really is something, because Austin, compared to a lot of cities, while we're growing like crazy here, is still not as big as Dallas or Houston, and yet Austin far outshines in terms of the participation. Both of those two large cities. Don't tell the Dallas folks that, but it's true. And there's a spirit in the Austin community, a spirit of service and a spirit of generosity that in some ways makes it, I don't want to say easy to organize a crop walk in Austin, but makes the response very, very generous. And Austin really is unique in that way. And the Austin Walk has always been a big walk, has always grown, and it's the response of this community. There's something unique about the Austin community.
Well, those of us who live here think so.
Yeah.
What would you project that the crop walk will be, say, in another 5, 6, 7 years?
Oh, well, we're hoping that, again, we talk in terms of 2,000 walkers these days, and we're hoping in 5 or 6 or 7 years we would have double that amount, and we'd be raising $200,000 or more. I say 200,000, but again, we have consistently underestimated what Austin does in this walk. We hoped we might raise $100,000 in last year's walk, and we raised over $112,000, again on one of the worst days of the year. So I don't want to underestimate what Austin can do in a couple of years.
Let's surprise the organizers.
That's right.
Sheila, we've got a little bit more time. What kind of appeal would you want to make to folks in Austin about participation in the crop walk?
If you can walk, walk. If you can't walk, support somebody who walks, and buy one of these wonderful T-shirts. I'm going to give them to all my friends. They're just beautiful, and that'll help support crop as well, right, Kevin?
That's right, and they're available at the walk too.
Sounds good. And what kind of then appeal would you give as a staff person for Church World Service to the folks in the Austin area? Get them to participate.
Church World Service is an organization that brings people together from on an interfaith basis. While Church World Service is a Christian organization, our partners include Muslims, Hindus, while it's mainly mainline Christians, our partners include the Latter-day Saints, and so Church World Service is a place where people can come together and work together and walk and raise money and make a difference and be a part of the wider community. And that's something that people need. We're often in our own place, in our own setting, and Church World Service is a place that can help us step out and meet other people and work with them and make a difference together as a community. And that's something that happens all over the world, and it happens right here in Austin.
So Church World Service really models the unity of people of faith.
Yes, it does.
Right? Lucky us that we have such a successful walk here in Austin, and we can make such a difference. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being here.
Thank you.
And Sheila, for sharing your experiences. Look forward to doing this again in another few years and seeing how we really have grown and the difference we make then. And thank you for joining us this week on Austin Faith Dialogue. We'll see you here again next week.